Hello, hello. I'm excited to be here as usual. Tonight we have YT Bell with us. And look, everybody's been asking me, what should we be doing as people? What can we do to be proactive to save our lives and save our neighborhood, save our community, save our nation? Well, we have the person on here that's going to lead us tonight. And look, she ranges through all generations. So call your grandmother and the little baby. Call them all because she'll reach us and we're going to do better after tonight. See you in just a moment. Welcome to A Moment with Vivacious, a freedom ride where we the people gather to build ourselves, our family, our community, and our nation. For the sound of America for Progress has reached critical mass. Understanding that we must put aside our differences to focus on the greater good. This is a place of collaboration to rebuild and restore our nation. Welcome to A Moment with Vivacious. Hello, hello. Hello, how are you this evening?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I am good. It's always so good to be with you. It's refreshing to my soul whenever you're around. And I want to thank you for being here because I've heard from so many of people that follow me. What are we doing? How do we vote? You know, those ballots we have in Georgia's books. And we don't know who to vote for. And, you know, I don't want to be telling people, hey, just vote this ballot. You know, I want them to learn, how. And Sigrid said, good evening, Sigrid. We're so glad to have you here with us this week. So I'm going to be quiet for just a moment, and I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself and tell us some of what you do.
Hi, everybody. I'm YT Bell. I'm a council member in the city of Clarkston, and I have been doing democracy-related voting rights work for over a decade throughout the state of Georgia and other states around the country. So I'm delighted to be with y'all tonight.
And we are delighted to have you here. So tell us a little bit about the area that you represent here in Georgia and what it's been like for you guys through this time that we're going through right now.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thank you for it. So I have the honor and pleasure of serving the most diverse 1.75 square miles in the country. Up to 60 languages are spoken in the city of Clarkston, Georgia, which sits right outside of Atlanta, in between Atlanta and Stone Mountain, Georgia, if you are a Georgia resident or know what that is. I mean, this time, of course, has been unprecedented. It has been uncertain in an array of issues, whether it is affordability, whether it is food security, and whether it's just general security and safety for individuals. And so we have been rapidly trying to respond in all facets of my life, whether on the city council or just in community work or as an advocate for voting right efforts. So to ensure everybody has fair and free access to their ballots. Just trying to keep community hopeful during this time, but understanding that the power that you hold is your vote at the ballot box. Because if it wasn't so precious, if it wasn't worth taking, it wouldn't be Supreme Court decisions that are changing maps and allowing them to dilute black and brown power, and it wouldn't be a deliberate effort to remove representation and meet your daily needs.
That's right where we are right now. But a lot of people, the ballot for my county, the ballot is like 5 pages up.
Yeah.
5 pages. And some of the questions that they have, it's like, what are you asking me?
Mm-hmm.
I felt like that was trickery. What are you asking me? Did you know that such and such and such and such? Okay, but what am I voting here?
Right.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I can. So I always tell people Now you have a tool that most people don't use as much as I think they should, which is mvp.sos.ga.gov. So if you go to that website, what you're going to find is your voter page. So for those that have never been to, they call it MVP because you're the MVP, right? You are the
Right.
voter. You go to the mvp.sos.ga.gov page and it shows your full ballot. So you don't have to wait until it's time to actually vote to like go through your ballot, do research on each of the candidates. One of the things I tell people is always vote with your values. So the things that you care about, the things that you need, making sure that you do your due diligence in researching each of the candidates because those individuals, if elected, will represent you and you're expecting that they actually do the work for you. So that's one of the tools that I tell people all the time. I don't tell you who to vote for. I tell you to vote based off of your values. And I also tell you to make sure you do your due diligence and research. So if there is an access to a library, you can always go into that library, go to that page, print it out, go home, take a few days to do your due diligence research, whether it's social media or the actual campaign pages, so that you can get acclimated to who these people are, what have they done, and what are they saying that they will do.
Another thing is, I don't know if you can address this, but I'm gonna ask, and
Okay.
it's about the ICE situation. People are afraid to show up. They're afraid to show up at their doctor's appointments. They're afraid to go to the store. They're afraid to send their children to school. Someone told me their neighbors um, had sold most of their belongings and hid money in the wall because they were illegal and they had to leave money behind for their children to take care of themselves if they got picked up by ICE. Some of the horrific things that people have to experience when the police do stop them, um, is almost like racism is so free now.
Mm-hmm.
Can you address it? How do we even help those in our community that's going through that? Not that we're not going through anything ourselves. Our fight is hard enough for ourselves because the way they're turning on us, and then society thinks it's okay for them to treat us that way because this is what they're doing.
Yeah, so I think, if any time other than now is the time for communities to come together because the attack on individuals that don't look like us, that may be foreign born, is an attack on us as Black folks too, right? And so it is an opportunity for us to come together and help them during this time to feel more comfortable or to come up with safety plans for them or just a triage of, hey, if this happens, then this is where we know to go do X, Y, and Z, right? I think also it is people taking real precautions in this moment, and I think that is definitely what they should do. Um, and also being mindful of where they are and just more vigilant than we have had to be in the past around your surroundings, around what people are doing around you, people listening to you, showing up to big, large gatherings, and the implications of that in this time. Because I mean, as even Black folks that are from the country have also been removed, and it's hard to find them and been put into some of the institutions or facilities that individuals have, and they actually were born here in the state. So I think that all of us have to come up with safety and security plans. We have to be more vigilant and aware of our surroundings, and this is where we band together as communities to keep all of us safe and be mindful of even safety plans for our family and friends. So they're aware of what we should be doing in this time, but also how to keep all of us safe because, I mean, we've seen across the country, whether you were born here or not born here, individuals have been removed.
And that's the saddest part, especially when a mom is taken from her babies. And some children, like in my daughter's neighborhood, she don't know the families, like know them, but those families ask her, "Could you please look out for our kids if anything happened to us?"
Mm-hmm. I think that's a real reality. Think about I'm from South Georgia, and so sometimes when Parents have to go to school. Somebody else that live down the street will take care of those babies. That's community, right? And that's also addressing and keeping everybody safe. And I think a lot of things that people have used for survival for decades are some of the tactics that we'll have to implement in this time, unfortunately, just because we are unsure, and everything is changing day by day.
And Barbara Dozier says, "Good evening, Lady Y.T. Bell, and
Hey.
Vivacious Speaks global audience, Lady Val."
Hey.
So, then, it can be so discouraging. Tell me this,
Mm-hmm.
because, I have to, I just look up to you, okay, and your opinion in politics, especially, but just in life and how politics is the it's almost to me like if you relate it to religion. You have religion, all these religions with their thing, but in the inside and the real deal is your relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
Minus the religion. So politics is these people out here playing their games, doing their thing, but in the middle and the real power of that is the people propelling forward for what we need. Could you discuss that for a minute?
Yeah, I mean, truth be told, community members and just like the individuals and listeners on today's show, you hold the power. I know that you may seem or feel powerless, but think about it. When it comes to anytime there's a reduction of something or removal of something, is because of fear. It is because after 2024, folks, in 2020, right? Let's go back a little bit. People turned out, especially Black and brown folks, at record rate. And so that caused them to see that these people have power. They're representing people. They're electing people that look like them, have similar interests in them. What can we do to dilute that power? And so there was a concerted effort, right, when it came to 2024, and some of the Project 2025 efforts, some of the Supreme Court efforts and decisions that were harmful to Black and brown community. Think about it. SNAP benefits, if you want to really stifle people from meeting their basic needs, you take away their food, right? You can't be productive at work if you got a headache because you're hungry. And just having dependents at home that need adequate food. And so that is the reality. And you saw that in that big ugly bill that actually passed, and a numerous of cuts around. And then we're talking about Georgia, in a state where we have so many hospital closures, and in some areas you don't even have access to adequate care. And so there's these things that keep you stagnant, right? And because it's a constant removal, but that's because we keep showing up, we keep representing people that are going to fight for us, and are fighting for the issues that we care about. I mean, think about it today in Tennessee, where I was talking to some friends who from Georgia who went to Tennessee, and they're out there protesting this maps, right? Having this session and trying to change these maps without minimum consideration. Those are the type of things that show that people actually have the power. The news is watching, the people are watching. These legislators that are making these decisions understand that they have an election coming up too. And so as a result of that, if people are upset and outraged, they've seen it across the country in the last couple of months, everywhere from Florida to over in Tennessee, and across the country, where you have seen areas flip, who used to represent them and who now represent them, because people voted with their values being the guiding star, based off the issues that they're hurting from. Around this state in Georgia, top issues are around the economy and jobs, and of course education. And so, most recently you saw an executive order that was signed to dismantle the Department of Education. Because why? If I can remove the streams or tools that keep people out of poverty, like education, we know it's a direct through line to that, then guess what? That keeps them stuck. They're not engaged, they're not active. If I can ensure that DEI is removed from most company policies, and I can take these jobs away from Black and brown folks that have been turning out, guess what? That strains them to where they don't may not want to feel that they hold the power and show up to the election. So these are all strategic tactics to keep people unmotivated and unexcited about this upcoming election. But the real reality is we have to all show up, because so much is at stake, and that's our tool in order to change it in all of these elected bodies that are on our ballot.
Thank you so much for that, because it's so important to talk about. You know, when I was coming up, people were voting for, fighting for voting rights. You know, I'm a little younger than the big fights, but this generation do not understand and know the value. We didn't pass on. Um, some of us did,
Mm-hmm.
but some of us had it passed on to us. But for most of us, and most not Gen X, the ones that come after Gen X, they don't. They have not been exposed to how hard we had to fight to
Mm-hmm.
have rights to vote, and so they don't understand the precious value,
Mm-hmm.
of why we. How do we get those values to those generations who don't understand?
I think this, that's a good question. I think this generation is still fighting. I don't think that they know the trait that y'all had to go through to fight for voting rights for just the process to initiate it, to say like these people need oversight from the federal government because there is a direct effort to dilute black and brown power. And I think, as you alluding to, that history repeat itself, right? The things that y'all were going through in the 60s are the things we're going through now in 2026. But I can say the younger folks have more passion, and are excited about it and have been showing up to protest. A lot of them I know getting younger and younger, understanding governance processes, being elected to office. All of that is stemmed from outrage and anger based off what they're seeing and feeling. Because I was talking to some friends and they're saying, "Hey, well, I might have to move back home to my mother's house just because of the cost of living and affordability." And I think that is starting to get people to be like, "Hey, the things that I said I was going to work so hard for are not even attainable." And so I think it's all up to all of us, right? It's up to us, like you're doing today, on the show, to educate them on what they can be doing, to educate them on the tools that are there to their disposal for them to check their ballot and to show up. But I also think that it's sometimes explaining and listening to them to find out why aren't they showing up, right? Where do they not see themselves? Instead of trying to tell people what you should ask them why they're not, and then from there try to find a through line. Because we've all been in that stage of, hey, I'm not going to do a certain thing because X. Well, explaining to them that like the reason that we need to all show up after the Supreme Court, the Calais case, is because that is maps. So people say, oh, well, that's just maps. That's just congressional representation. No, maps equate resources. So that pothole that you care about, that comes
Mm-hmm.
from you being counted at the census. That
Mm-hmm.
also means that if they redraw the lines and you don't have adequate representation there, there are not going to be federal funds for new infrastructure projects to fix that highway that you complain about all the time, or fix that, eventually come down to the local level and fix that pothole. But it also means access to care, right? Based on your representation, that is the prioritization of the issues that you care about. And I think that is up for us to like make that resonate to them and illustrate how the actions that we're seeing impact their everyday life. Not just, oh, this is politics, or hey, they signed this executive order. This is about access. This is about connectivity. This is about people thriving. And so we really have to make it plain and resonate with people to illustrate this is how it impacts your everyday life. Or that goal that you have is harder to obtain because of these regulations and legislation that just passed.
Mm-hmm. Um, I even had someone on the show recently, and I hear people say this a lot. Well, as a black person, I'm not going to get out here and rally. That's their rallies. That's their protest time. That's not us. It's their turn. They did all of this. Tell me your response to that.
I think everybody has a role in this fight, and I acknowledge that some people are tired. If you've been out there, you've been marching, and you said I'm tired of that, you figure out what role can you play. Is your role now, if you're not marching, to call your legislators up on the phone and say, "Look, I am concerned about these actions." If it's not you doing that, are you not out there marching, but you're just standing in solidarity with them? Are you making sure that they have water or they have bail money? Right? If they are arrested, like those are the things that you got to think outside of, hey, I might, this may not be the movement or the tactic that I want to be in or evoke at this time, but what is it that I can do? Because everything that's happened doesn't just affect some of us, it affects all of us. And I,
Yes.
those are the things that people have to think about.
Yeah, they call me crazy. Yeah, yeah, you crazy for doing it. You crazy for being out there. But I understand that my grandson has dreams.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, Miss Bell, is just saying, should we leave the country?
I mean, that's up to the person. I mean, the issues. So you got to ask yourself a values based question. Do the people that I care about still live in that country that I have the luxury and the privilege to leave from? Because to leave is a luxury, right? And it doesn't mean that wherever you go to, the conditions are going to be better for you, right? And I think you have to see all sides of that. But if the people that you care about are still in this country and you love them, then you have to do everything in your path, whether you're here or far, right? In order to keep them safe. And I think that goes back to voting, right? Why do you vote? For me, I talk and tell people I vote for everybody that cannot vote, right? Because of the simple fact being a local elected official and having residents that are not eligible to vote, but they pay taxes when they go to the gas station or when they go to a convenience store, whether they're a citizen or not. And so I vote to ensure that they have adequate representation. And I also tell my friends to vote, right? And so, voting is not like a one-on-one sport. It is a team sport. And so one of the things that folks can definitely do is if you on Saturday, because right now in Georgia, early voting is open, right?
Right.
If you know on Friday when you get off of work, you're gonna go to a movie. Before you go to a movie with your friends, say, "Hey, let's stop at that ballot box." It don't take us top 5 or 10 minutes before we go to this movie to all go vote together. That's motivation. That's accountability. Some of that has to happen in this time too. We cannot not leave anybody's voice not being heard or lifted up on this ballot this year, and they're gonna take some innovative approaches in order to get us there.
And I want to stay local for a little while, because when I say want to leave the country, that's national talk. So I want to come back local for a moment, and I want to talk about um, visibility,
Mm-hmm.
visibility, because people feel like they're invisible. What differences? That's one reason that they fight voting, because I'm invisible. How do, because I believe it should start in your community. How do people become uh, visible enough to care?
Yeah, I think the core of that is care, right? And how do you define care? Some people in my community are at every city council meeting that I have, and I appreciate their insight and their input and their direction and their push, right? That only makes
Mhm.
me better and makes me grow because I'm evolving to think through their perspective on life. I think there are other folks that don't want to show up to meetings, right? And that's totally fine. But if there's a way for you to show up and be a part of a committee meeting or be a committee member, right? If you want to change something, you embed yourself into the system that you're trying to change. And I think that is easily more visible. I think the other thing is remember, you elected the people locally that represent you. You have their phone number, their campaign page, their email address. You should use your voice and your time that you do have and pick up that handy device that everybody oftentimes has in their hand, their phone, and you should send them a note, even if it's on social media, to say, hey, I'm displeased with you, or I appreciate everything that you're doing, because that keeps them in the fight, even when you're not fighting. I often tell folks that I fight for the folks that are not in the audience, right? Because they elected me because they can't be here every day. And so that's why I'm here. And I think, but you got, for community members that feel invisible, one of the ways you do that is you hold them accountable, right? If they're doing something you don't like, let them know. If you want to partnership with them or get in partnership with them on projects, tell them. I think if you also want to know what's going on, reach out, But I think also local elected officials have to do a better job by being more present, being more vigilant. I like to go sit at my coffee shop, and as people come up, I think they're just as surprised to see me there as I am to see them. I'm excited to see them, but they say, hey, what's going on over there at City Hall? And I explained it to them and say, oh, well, that was thoughtful insight. But one of the things that I'll be doing over this summer is doing more listening sessions. That's another way, because I don't want, people to feel invisible just because they can't make it to City Hall or they can't make it to the community center so I can listen to them, we're going to go on the road. So we're going to go from apartment complex to apartment complex. You got to meet people where they are to hear what their issue is so that you can adequately represent them. And so that requires, it's a twofold, right? It requires residents, calling things out, asking questions, being present where they're able to, but it also requires local elected officials to show up and meet people where they are and don't expect for them always to come to them.
I think that's just dynamic. That's because those are the people who really feel left out, especially people that have to live in hotels. One of my friends said, I feel homeless. I said, but you can't, I'm homeless. Why don't you vote? I'm homeless. I said, don't you live in a hotel? She said, you can use the hotel address.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe some of those listening meetings could include people that have to live in a hotel, because so many people now are having to live in a hotel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, think about it. The counties, I currently don't have a hotel, but that's one day I hope that we will have a hotel in my city. But in the county, there are tons of hotels. I think I've seen a lot of good commissioners actually have events around in the vicinity of the hotel to kind of get those people's input. But I think that's also if we have a phone number or a text message. I use different tools that can text everybody, and sometimes I get great replies and great responses. And I think it goes back to us meeting people where they are. Everybody's not gonna come to an event. Everybody may not be able to come, even when I have my listening sessions, right? My expectation is not that everybody will show up. It is just me having opportunities for visibility. But that doesn't mean the work stops. That just means that I have to then go from going to a location and having a listening session to actually following back up with a text message or a phone call, especially if they have voted for me at one point. There's a full database with their information that I use, and I contact them on there, and I ask them, what are your issues? What are your values? What do you care about? I think it's just an ongoing effort, right, to keep them engaged, to let them know that my voice does matter, because I got this one elected official that I hear from all the time, because ultimately, as elected officials, you want to be accessible. And so being accessible means using every tool that you have in your toolbox to meet your constituency where they are.
And I just want you to know that's bigger than everything to me, because my lady, I had to, she knows my name because I had Rasa. If she don't know my name, whoever answers that phone, I say, I don't want to hear another one of those automated messages. You have to get out there sometimes, because we want to know, especially on a federal level, what are you doing to represent us?
Mm-hmm.
Because it always seems like the people we're on but I know it's different for you. I'm listening to you, and it's different for you, because I used to live out in DeKalb. I'm sorry, and now I live in Fulton, but I still have a lot of people who lean on me or depend on me to keep them up. And my biggest thing is teaching civics lessons.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you calling that person for this? They are not the person that do that. You have to call this person. Let's look it up. And I'm always taking them to my voters page.
Mm-hmm.
This is where you're going to find out who represents you and who's doing that, because they're going to give you an answer, and they're going to be right, but they still don't have to do anything about what it is that you feel like you need right now.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, civics lessons is the biggest lesson.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so difficult. They have people answering the phones, when you call your representatives. There's people, and I'm just saying this to you, and I want people to know, I'm glad you're here, because they know everybody's not like that. Mm-hmm. You can dial from, until it's 3 weeks before it's time to vote, you won't get a decent email response.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, we've read your it's not that automated one that I've heard for 2 years, because elections is up. So if you're not running, you want me to vote for your friend.
Mhm.
And I want to talk about this because this is a big deal. Um, I'm talking to people about why do I vote for them? I'm a vote. They either want to vote all black, no, no, or they want to vote all Democrat. I want to know why you picked that person. Tell us, like, because everybody said we got to flip it, so we want Democrat. But and I may be wrong, and if I'm wrong, please tell us. Um, how should we be looking at that right now?
I think you should be voting based off of the issues that are impeding your ability to thrive right now in this moment. And so that requires us to do some research. It's not going to be easy that you just check a box and keep going, right? It means that you actually go to that mvp.sos.ga.gov webpage, you pull your ballot, you look at every candidate that's on there because would you want somebody to select anybody to supervise you at work? No, you want them to do that, have done their due diligence, have interviewed appropriately, have looked at their credentials. And so you have to take voting just that serious as well. And it doesn't mean that you have to do that all rapidly in one day. Remember, early voting is several weeks. And actually here in Georgia, you have until next week to vote early. But of course, election day is not until May 19th. That's still 13 whole days. So even if you did a section every day on your ballot to kind of do your due diligence research, and it don't have to be extenuous. It can be something as simple as you go on to social media, as you go onto their webpage, and you want to find the people that align with your values and have been talking about the issues that are impeding the progress of your life and your ability to thrive in your current community.
So can we talk about this? What is the importance, um, or is it very important of voting blue? Because that's what I'm telling people. Look, we got to get these people out of here because they're killing us. I'm exaggerating. I don't say they're killing us, but what is the importance of turning it blue, or is that important?
Well, that's important to me because I'm gonna vote for people that align with my values, the people that care about the issues that I care about, the people that actions align with what I need or I think is best done. When I see currently in this country and the hardship that people are facing, I want somebody that's compassionate. I want somebody that understands the education, healthcare, the economy, and having a quality of life is something that I care about. And those people align with my values, so that's who I'm going to vote for. However, there are some cases on the local level and sometimes on the county level where the races are not blue or red, right? They are nonpartisan races, which require people to do some due diligence. I will tell you this though, a lot of advocacy organizations actually make that really easy for you. Folks that like this is what they do day in and day out, they often tell you, hey, they have scorecards some of the time. They have forums for you to participate in. A lot of them are virtual, some of them are in person. But then you don't have to do as much research because you can just listen. That is a form of studying somebody, though. It's listening to what they're saying because you're just like, this aligns with my value, this may not. Because they could say one thing on a web page or maybe on a campaign page, but when you see them or in person or you ask the question in person, that's another thing. I think to your question earlier around Congress, remember, they're on a schedule just like you are, right? And they also have district offices. So you may not get to the actual representative, but you can get to their direct staffer, right? That is in your
Yep.
community 365. They have an office you could go and pop up, right? You could call in. You may not get an email from that congressional leader, but also congressional leaders their schedule is on the Congress webpage. It tells you when they're in recess. Okay, when they're in recess, that means they're at home. When they're at home, they're going to have community events. Look on their social media, identify what events they're having, and show up. You may can't get them on an email, but you can show up to an event and be present and ask them that same question that you have been desiring and dying to ask them for weeks.
I want to talk about this if we can.
Mhm.
Yeah, we still have a few more minutes. I want to talk about the power of local government in a federal area. And what do I mean by that? Your face look like, what do I mean by that? I mean, how do we vote? How do we set up our community? Because when we think of things that's going on, that's going to be a little further in the conversation. The things that's going on a federal level, how do we build the power in community, in our communities to fight on a federal level?
Mm-hmm.
How do we empower our communities to fight on a federal level?
Yeah, I think you start with what you're doing now, Miss Vivacious, is you're educating them. You're having a space where people can lean in and listen. They may not can show up for everything, but they can tune in to you sharing the questions that they have and getting a viable answer to it. I think the other thing, oh, I think I'm frozen. Oh, okay, I'm back. So they can definitely tune in. I mean, they can tune into, the show that you have happening now. They may not be able to watch it in real time, but they can go back and review it. I think that it also requires community members and us alike, right? To start asking people, what is that issue that's keeping you up at night? And then also not relying solely on government to find solutions for it, because there may be a barber in your community. There may be somebody who leads to a local food bank in your community. There may be a banker, right? All of the answers that you need to invoke yourself into systems that work for you are usually in your community. But I think that starts with opening communication and consistent and building trust with your neighbor and your friends in your community, so they'll trust you as a reliable source, incredible source at that, right? In order to and get them to take any actions or mobilize folks to do things in a response to things, and just being cognizant that everybody's role is not to talk about things or show up to things. Maybe they play a background role, so being more strategic about what you're asking people to do, but also, like, most time people just want to be heard, right? Do you know how much you can get out of somebody by you asking them how your day was? You could be the first and only person all day that has asked somebody, how are you doing? Right? That changes the mood, that shifts the tone, that shifts whatever I want, what I'm willing to do with you, right? It's because you care. And right now, people want to know that other people care about them, they care what they're going through, and they will work with them in order to find viable solutions with them.
We feel like, let me just say, I feel like our country is just man. I can't believe some of this stuff when I wake up in the morning. It was almost. It's gonna sound a little crazy. When the war was going and they're blowing up buildings and all of this stuff. Um, at least I felt like I know what's going on. It was crazy. It was crazy, but I knew what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
I knew, as far as people, we were hurt, and our country was being torn apart.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like almost in the silence that we have now, I can tell from the incompetence of the federal government right now that things can't be going well. That how do we know if our children is gonna be going to war?
Mm-hmm.
They're crazy enough to even want to take our children away. They're getting richer, the people in the White House and everybody they're getting richer and richer by billions and trillions of dollars, while we don't even have any food. And it's like, how do we get a hold on that? How in the world do we come to a place where we can feel like we can fight back?
I think that's where the accountability comes into play, right? You may be watching it and you may see it on the news, but you'll be surprised how many people are not listening to radio or what's happening in the world, because how can they when they're just trying to meet their basic needs and feed their family, right? And they may be working multiple jobs, they could be caregivers and taking care of dependents. And so as a result of that, I think in some community roles are just to let you know what's going on, what they saw on the news, right? And so, like, the things that you should be precautious about. And I think that's where it starts. It starts with more conversations about what is happening and naming it, right? These are the people. The reason why your gas is so high, because there's a war that we don't know what the origin is or why it even started, which is blocking access to get fuel and oil back to this country. And so as a result, right now, gas is $5. So you got to figure out if you're going to feed yourself, you're going to put gas in your car so you can go to your job. And people need to name who is the reason for it. And I think that is what doesn't happen, right? People want to go, out and say I'm in outrage, but you're not holding people accountable because, people have short memory, right? That the reason that we're in some of the mess that we're in is because these people chose to make this decision, or they packed the court. So the outcomes are never going to be favorable for us, because that can help people recall, right? When they go to the ballot box, okay, maybe I shouldn't be voting for these folks because they're voting in directly in outside of my interests, right? Even though on the TV ad that I saw, they said, "Yeah, we care about entrepreneurs and we're going to help you build well." Well, that's not what the facts say. The facts say that companies are being developed and they're making billions out the back of poor individuals, while most folks are trying to figure out how they're going to feed their family. And believe it or not, that is one of the most valuable and unsought of tools that could be used is accountability, because people need to be reminded through education, through updates, through awareness, through community conversations on who is the reason. Because everybody doesn't watch the news, is not as vigilant around what's going on. I mean, you'll be surprised. I was doing a project a couple of years ago, and what I noticed is that a lot of folks in the medical field are not as vigilant, don't vote as frequently as some other frequent voters. And a lot of that is because they're occupied, right? If they're working the halls at a hospital or maybe working a clinic, they're not thinking about voting, they're thinking about their patients. And I think it's so easy to remind them that, hey, an election is coming up, and think healthcare is on the ballot. It's on the ballot every year. Think about all of, CDC changes, people losing their jobs in public health. And also, cold season came by. We didn't know what people had. But that's because public health is on the public health, and access to health and quality health is always on the ballot. So you just got to make sure it resonates with folks. You got to help them understand what is going on and who's at fault for it, and not just let them hear the slogans on the radio ads or the TV ads that they hear.
Yeah, yeah. I was just talking to a coworker the other day. I said, "Look, you have to vote."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I started telling her all the things. I started talking about, like you're saying, all the things that's going on this ballot.
Mm-hmm.
I said, we sitting in this jail. The magistrate, I told a patient the other day, what's going to happen? I said, that magistrate judge you have to go before in the morning?
Mm-hmm.
Did you vote? Did you vote?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to vote. So
yeah,
I just want to thank you for being here. Thank you so much. So tell me, what are you going to leave us with today?
I mean, I'll leave you with there was a complete upset of a decision of a good Supreme Court case, not a
Right.
good, but a Supreme Court case just a few days ago, where basically it made racially gerrymandering okay for states to do. And you're seeing it around the country, whether you live anywhere in the South. And so we're going back, and history is repeating itself to create maps to dilute our black and brown political power. What we can do in this moment is show up in numbers, but don't wait until election day, because there may be barriers to accessing the ballot. Show up on early vote. I went and voted a couple of days ago. There was nobody in there. It'll take a couple of seconds, and you have at least conducted the one job that you have. Now, after that, it's up to you to invite 5 or 6 friends and say, hey, if you care about me, if you care about the quality of life of my kids, my nephews, and my friends, you will also show up to vote, because everything's at stake, whether it's the DOE, whether it's the DOJ, and it is not just removal of foreign-born individuals. It's black and brown people that look like us. And so if we want to stop that from happening, guess what we have to do? Show up to vote.
Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. I want y'all to know that this lady shows up every time, not only for Vivacious Speaks, but for Georgia and for this country. Thank you so much, Miss Bell, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. And I appreciate the opportunity, and I always will be there for you. So if you
You're
call,
always there for me. Thank you.
no problem.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Good night.